Since 2017, I am in charge of planning events during Global Days. First of all, we make sure that what we want to do is related to our theory of change. Then we gather the whole staff in a meeting to explain them what we want to do, the objective we want to reach for that day, so as to have everyone's input in the planning of the event. After that, we define everyone's tasks for the event, and then we start evaluating until the day of the celebration.
Coaches Across Continents is celebrating together with our community members in more than 55 countries around the world, 5 global days throughout the calendar year. This podcast is recorded just a few weeks before International Women's Day on March 8th, but we hope that it will inspire and encourage you to find creative ways to celebrate these 5 days with our global network.
Sometimes we invite people from the government, like the governor, ministers, or mayors, or we simply invite our partners and the regional schools. But our special guests are always students and Kalibuka community members.
Hello, and a warm welcome to Coaches Across Continents Global Day podcast with our guest, Elvis Nshimba, and your host, Marcus Bench. I'm happy that technology allows us to record this interview, despite the fact that Elvis and I are about 2,500 kilometers apart. I'm sitting here in my apartment in Durban, South Africa, looking over the ocean, and Elvis is at the Football for Hope Center in Lubumbashi in the Democratic Republic of Congo, if I'm right.
Yes, exactly. This is right.
Okay, thank you, Elvis, for joining us this morning and welcome to our virtual podcast table.
You're welcome, Marcus, and thank you to Coaches Across Continents for selecting me for this interview.
Thank you, Elvis, for joining us and for accepting the invite. You've certainly been a vital part of Coaches Across Continents over the past years, implementing many different programs, being involved in different initiatives. Our listeners will learn about you. I'm excited to speak to you at this morning and learn also more about your organization, Malaika, and especially how you celebrate your global days. At the beginning, I would like to briefly explain the purpose of this podcast. Coaches Across Continents is celebrating together with our community members in more than 55 countries around the world, 5 global days throughout the calendar year. And that are namely International Women's Day, United Nations Sport for Development and Peace Day on April 8th, Peace Day on September 21st, Universal Children's Day on November 20th, and World AIDS Day on December 1st. This podcast is recorded just a few weeks before International Women's Day on March 8th, but we hope that it will inspire and encourage you to find creative ways to celebrate these 5 days with our global network. So Elvis, let's get started and get into our questions that I've prepared for our conversation this morning. In preparation for our call, I have learned from you, Elvis, that you have been born in Kamina, which is, I've checked it on Google Maps and then found out that it's about 600 kilometers north of Lubumbashi, the city where you are right now. And today you are the Program and Evaluation Manager at the Kalibuka Football for Hope Center, which is hosted by the Georges Malaika Foundation. First, I would like to ask you if you could please describe how you at Malaika prepare for the celebration of the Global Day?
Yes, Marcus. Since 2017, I am in charge of planning events during Global Days. First of all, we make sure that we want to do what we want to do is related to our theory of change. Then we gather the whole staff in a meeting to explain them what we want to do, the objective we want to reach for that day, so as to have everyone's input in the planning of the event. After that, we define everyone's tasks for the event, and then we start evaluating until the day of the celebration. Sometimes we invite people from the government, like the governor, ministers, or mayors, or we simply invite our partners and the regional schools. But our special guests are always students and Kalibuka community members.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of people being involved and also like quite a structured and plan that is put into place to make sure to prepare well for these days. I think I also heard you mentioning some other interesting phrases like theory of change or evaluation, which we will come back later during our interview. But next, I would like to ask you if you could please describe to our listeners, our audience, how you then actually celebrate the Global Day with Malaika on the actual day when it happens. If you could share some of the stories or ways you have celebrated in the past.
Yeah, okay, so before I answer, one must know that at Malaika we have a school and a community center. So in our program for the celebration, we include one, sketches and poems implemented by Malaika students, and these sketches will have messages linked to the meaning of the Global Day. And two, we have some African music and dances made by either youths from the community center or students from the school. And then three, we have coaches across continents games addressing issues linked to that day. We start normally implementing them a week before the event with the youths or with students and community members who train at the center. And then during the event, we implement them with volunteers from the crowd surrounding us, generally people from the village who comes for the celebration. And four, there is a main message for the occasion. It is a kind of a lecture read either by a responsible or a teacher. And then five, during some days, such as the World AIDS Day, we invite a specialist to come to our youths to talk to our students and our community members so that everyone can know what is the disease and how it is spread in the community. And then lastly, in some occasions, we celebrate global days with musicians who want to promote child's rights, to promote women's rights, or who would like to address some social issues, such like AIDS or violence in the community, through their songs. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you for sharing, Elvis. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of different activities going on. And as I was listening to you, and I had to smile a little bit for myself when you mentioned African music and dances. I think that's something I've also learned on the African continent, but kind of around the world, that music and dance is something that people always enjoy, and it should it should always be part of any celebration, no matter if it's a wedding or a birthday or just a weekend where people get together and have a good time. Music and dance is something that people enjoy, and I'm happy that it's also vital part of your Global Day celebrations. But I also heard from your explanation that your Global Days really evolve around the youth and children at your center. These are the people that need to be served, and they own the celebration, which I think is very important to notice as well. And I'm sure that also contributes to the excitement and the eagerness for the children to come, to enjoy themselves, to stay involved, or to get involved. What advice would you give to other organizations on how to raise awareness and share information within their community in preparation for a Global Day?
What I would advise to other organizations is first to define a theory of change. This is very important. And then set objectives. This way, they should have an answer when they are asked, why do you celebrate that day? Why do you celebrate this day? And they have also to identify the most interesting activities in their community that can attract community members to join their celebration. This way, they should make a high impact within the organizations. They must also work as a team. Everyone must be valued by taking into account their inputs, if for sure these inputs are constructive or if they meet the organization's aspirations. And then everyone within the organization will be aware of his tasks for the event. But then all tasks must be coordinated by someone on top. So this is an advice that I should give to other organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Elvis. Yeah, I heard you saying at the beginning that it's so important to ask the why question, like why do we actually do that? And I've interestingly enough, I've just learned or was reminded for myself yesterday about to ask myself why do I do something instead of like often we ask what or how we will do it, but I think the motivation comes from the question, why do we do that? Why do we want to celebrate? And I think, that's also very important to consider when preparing for a global day. Another thing I've noticed is that you've repeatedly used now the phrase theory of change. Could you please briefly explain this phrase to our listeners and what it means to you and to Malaika?
Oh, yes. So, talking about the theory of change, I may say that it is the big image that an organization is pursuing in all activities. For example, at Malaika, what we want our community to be, what we want Kalibuka to be. It is like our dream, and everything we are doing is around that big image that we want to make concrete in the village. So, this is for me the theory of change.
Mm. Thank you, Elvis, for this brief explanation. And I want to use this opportunity to also tell our audience that during the course of the year, we will also provide a resource called Theory of Change that can help organizations to exactly develop this big image, this dream that they follow, and that basically guides all programs and all initiatives that are being implemented. So please watch out for news and posts from coaches across continents so you don't miss out on this valuable resource. You're listening to the Coaches Across Continents Global Days podcast with our guest, Elvis Nshimba from the Malaika Foundation in the DRC, and your host, Marcus Binge. Coming back to the Global Days and the children and the youth and politicians and artists and experts that you spoke about earlier and that are usually involved in your Global Days, that sounds like a lot of people. What would you say, how many people are usually joining or attending your Global Days celebrations?
It depends on the nature of the celebration. But normally we often gather at least 450 people. As an example, during the Peace One Day last year, we gathered 1,011 people, including our students and youths from the center.
Oh wow, yeah, that sounds big numbers joining for this for one day event. And I just want to make sure that people don't get scared from these numbers. You can start with any size. I'm wondering also if you at Malaika use social media to raise awareness before a global day or also to share impact stories after the event. And if yes, if you could explain to our audience why you do that and how does it benefit Malaika?
Yes, We do use social media. We are on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. So the question why? First, because we would like to promote our activities, to show what we are doing to people from the world. And then second, because people in the social media are not fully aware. So we take it as an opportunity for us to sensitize them, and they can be inspired to do the same in their communities or in their organizations, or some people can even join our cause and contribute with their expertise either online or through a site visit at Kalebuka.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. How you explain that. Social media helps you to get people involved and to people to come. And do you also collect in any way then data information about how many people have joined and how many people have participated in an event or in a global day? And if yes, how do you use this information? How does it benefit the work of Malaika?
Yes, we collect data during the celebration. So what we do is we collect the number of people who join us for the celebration. We count the number of girls or women, the number of boys and men, and this helps us measure our impact at the end of the year. But also it helps us fill our reports and narratives because some of the programs might be supported by people or organizations which will require a report at the end of the project.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think we've also just touched on two important topics: social media and monitoring and evaluation. Also, two resources that coaches across continents will provide further information throughout the year. For everybody who listens to this podcast and wants to know more about that and go deeper into that, please stay informed. I will provide more information about that at the end of the podcast. Moving on to some other aspects of hosting and implementing a global day. Has Malaika always done it on their own, or have you ever partnered also with other organizations in your community when celebrating a global day? And if yes, what did the partnership look like? How did it come to life?
Normally, we have not yet partnered with other local organizations to celebrate global days, but we partner with regional schools. This is the case of the 2018 World Arts Day. Our objectives were to raise awareness among youths at the school age, and we celebrated with the regional schools, combining both coaches across continents games based on HIV and traditional football. Then we will follow the messages on HIV/AIDS. This message was taught by a doctor. So people were very curious and came to join us because it's funny to watch students playing football. We also partner with some local corporations. If, for example, during the rainy season, we would like to have tents or maybe we would like to have snacks for our students, then we partner with them. They join us for the celebration.
Mm. Yeah, and I think also it sounds to me like that these partnerships also help you. I mean, especially working with schools to gather more people joining in and benefiting from the activities you have planned and you have prepared. Yeah. Earlier during our interview, you also mentioned that you sometimes invite mayors, governors, or ministers to your global days. And you also said that experts on certain days, you just mentioned now HIV/AIDS and the doctor that taught about this topic, speak to the children about that. This leads me to a question, and I would like to know what you think about if a celebration of a global day can also lead to a sustainable impact that goes beyond that one day. And if yes, what does it need and what needs to be done and considered to have a lasting impact?
I think yes. During the celebration, people have a chance to listen to the message that can change their lives. But yet, what I realize is that they are not really ready to practice them. And we do not need to do it once. We do not even need to wait for the next event or the next celebration, but we must make an ongoing program away from the celebration to keep teaching them through games, through training sessions, or initiate a door-to-door survey to learn about their new attitudes, their knowledge, or their practices on the targeted issues. This will allow the organization to remind them again or teach those who never had the chance to join the event. And one can also initiate focus group discussions, for example, with groups of people. But the most important thing is measuring the impact afterwards. This is really very important.
Hmm. Yeah, I can hear and see like yeah how really following up after the event can, as you say, reach even more people than actually have joined the event. So the impact numbers might be even much bigger, and the global day, the celebration might just be a starting point. Very interesting. Yeah. That leads me now also to the question that there may be some individuals and possibly also leaders of organizations who will be listening to this podcast and who would like to organize an event to celebrate a global day in their community. And so, Elvis, I can share about you that you have joined Malaika as a teacher before becoming a coach at your community center in 2015. And you mentioned earlier that, yeah, now you are responsible for organizing all these global days and these events. You also became a community impact coach with Coaches Across Continents in 2016 and have since then facilitated many programs with other community leaders in the DRC, but also in Zambia and in South Africa over the past years. And last year in 2018, you've also worked online with some of our participants from the online education program, have mentored them to be able to use sport for social impact in their community, develop games and create activities. What do you think can an individual do to create an impact, or what would be your advice for organizations how to prepare for a global day?
First, I would like to encourage everyone listening us to plan an event for their organizations if they belong to. And I believe that change always starts by one person, one only, through his leadership skills, his commitment, his determination. He can bring a change in the community. To create an impact, an individual has to show the example by his actions. This way, he can be a reference for others. For instance, one wants to address gender-based discrimination in his community. He must show the example through his behavior, his attitudes, and his ways of treating women wherever he is and whatever the situation that occurs. So this is the way that I see it.
Nice. Yeah. I think yeah, that also leads me to some other facts and some other characteristics that I would like to share with our audience about you, Elvis. So yeah, in preparation to this podcast interview, you have expressed to me that you, yeah, have a strong desire to work towards the development of your community. Like as you mentioned just in your answer, the change starts with one person, and that you always strive to do your best. And I've unfortunately not had the privilege to work with you on field, but I've seen a lot of posts from you, and I've heard from my colleagues, and yeah, that the love for children is that what motivates you, and what makes you teach them inside and outside the classroom. And you also have a particular passion, which we could already hear in your previous answer, to especially help girls to reach their full potential. And as previously mentioned, we are recording this podcast just a few weeks before International Women's Day on March 8th. And this leads me to our final question in this podcast. What are your plans for this year? How will Malaika celebrate this day in Lubumbashi?
Okay, so our priority at Malaika this year is to empower girls and their communities through education in and outside the classroom. So this is address gender inequality by increasing the number of female beneficiaries or participants in our programs. We're also increasing the number of female coaches of football for social change within our organizations. And our plan for March 8th, we will celebrate with students from the Malaika School, youths from the Kalibuka Football for Hope Center, and community members. And so this will be, as what I've explained before in the previous questions, we'll deal with sketches, poems, African dance, and etc. And after March 8th, we will go in regional schools to play the Ask for Choice curriculum. So the Ask for Choice games with students and teachers from regional schools. And we have started the Ask for Choice at our community center today at 8 a.m. this morning with 3 new female coaches who we are teaching to lead games. And these new female coaches will work with me in schools. For the rest of the global days of the year, we are still studying ways to innovate the celebration in order to increase our impact of the year.
Wow, yeah, that sounds really exciting, Elvis. Thank you for sharing. And I think, yeah, listening to you, I feel like it summarizes the different aspects that we have been talking about during our interview. And I'm sure that children and youth will enjoy being so involved in the planning and implementation of the day. I can also see and understand how the celebration goes beyond the actual International Women's Day. You do things already in preparation for it, and things will continue after March 8th, which I think is great. And also, you're not just talking about women's rights, but you're also implementing it by creating the space for women to lead sessions on the field, for example. I think, yeah, that's really exciting and touches on the different aspects that we have been talking about during this interview. I would like to say thank you to you, Elvis, for sharing your experience and your knowledge with our virtual audience this morning. Thank you very much for being with us.
You're welcome, and thank you too, and thanks to coaches across continents.
Yeah, wonderful. And to our audience, wherever you may be and whenever you may listen to this, I hope you have enjoyed listening to our first virtual podcast, and I hope you stay informed about the upcoming podcast by either signing up for our YouTube channel, checking our Facebook page where we will post regularly these podcasts, or by becoming part of our global network. So if you want to know more about Coaches Across Continents, please reach out to us under info@coachesacrosscontinents.org. Thank you very much for listening and have a nice day. Goodbye.